Hello everyone, welcome to episode 4 of the Zenith Endurance Podcast. Our guest today is Mary Kerkvliet of EmpowerU, which is a physical therapy group based out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And we're really excited for her to hop on the show to share her story and exactly what makes her processes so effective in getting us runners prepared to run and back out the door if we happen to get injured. So be sure to listen, and if you aren't already subscribed, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, so you can stay up to date on everything that's going on. Enjoy the show. Thank you. All right, welcome everybody to episode 4 of the Zenith Endurance Podcast. We're really excited today to host our guest, Mary with EmpowerU. So Mary, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Thank you for having me on.
Of course, thank you for being here. And of course, we're your hosts, Derek and
Rod.
Yes, with Zenith Endurance. So yeah, we're stoked to be here. We're really excited to have Mary on the show. For those of you who aren't familiar with her, she's a physical therapist who works with EmpowerU, based out of Sioux Falls, and she specializes in treating runners. So super applicable. And working at 605 Running Company, we've had a close partnership with them, and seeing the success stories of some of the athletes that she's worked with has been really, really special. So I'm really excited for her to be able to share her story and how she got to where she is, and what makes her services so beneficial to our community. So without further ado, Mary, let's just jump right into it. So you got into running. How did you get into running in your personal life?
Yeah. So running for me began back in high school. I was track athlete and primarily 800 and 400 meter runner. From there, outside of track and field, I was also in other sports as well, in small town Iowa. But I was recruited and actually walked on to the University of Iowa and took my running into the collegiate level after high school there, and hopped on the cross country team and did indoor track as well. As far as experience at the University of Iowa, it was pretty eye-opening going into more of that endurance factor with the cross country team. One of the things that I look back at now is that first cross country camp. I'm like, cross country camp, what's this going to be about? But going a little bit more into some endurance training, and that ultimately led to more of my recreational running now. I always saw myself more kind of with that sprinting, that 400, 800 runner. Got a hold of the coach. They're like, hey, I want you to try cross country. I'm like, all right, I'll give it a go. But that experience at Iowa led to my love of, long distance running, recreational running. Took that into physical therapy as well. I was lucky enough to do a internship down in Gainesville, Florida, where I was actually with a running specialist. And it's funny because that experience there kind of went into it, had done some outpatient physical therapy tech work. It's like, I don't know if I really like this type of deal. But Santi, who I worked with down in Florida, he totally drove what I wanted to do, and it just connected. With seeing him work with endurance-based runners, working with those running-related injuries, and seeing them be out of running, and then getting them back into that program development, and then ultimately getting them to their goals where they want to be, and seeing that process is really what drove me into wanting to be a running specialist for my career as a physical therapist. So that's kind of where running has took me as far as where I started, and to where I am now with specializing with runners. And right now, running for me is running 15 to 20 miles a week. Done some half marathons, 3 total, and wanting to do more half marathons, but right now kind of building a base and getting getting in, off that treadmill and hopefully outdoors a little bit more is the goal here. But just more of a kind of recreational runner right now.
Awesome. Well, I think we're all counting down the days until it gets a little bit nicer out. But,
Great.
one thing you mentioned that I think really stood out to me was kind of like the people aspect is what really drew you into it. So, do you have any like specific examples of like, oh, you helped treat this person and you saw them get back into action? Like any success stories that really stand out to you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. A lot, and I would say this goes with a couple examples, but the the athlete or the person that comes to me and says, "Well, I used to be a runner." I'm like, "Used to be a runner?" Like, well, I've been dealing with this injury for it could be up to many months to a year. Have done many different interventions in the medical profession, with physical therapy being one, but also, working with other doctors, whether it's surgical means, whether it's more injection means. But when we come and we can be more specific, and you're working with someone who gets running, who knows running, and I doing that specialization and work to enhance my runners with getting a gait analysis, treadmill work, something that they may have not done in the past, and knowing which type of things to look for with runners is really kind of enhances those special moments when I get someone that says, "Yeah, I used to be a runner, but I don't know if that's something that I can do anymore." Those are the special moments for me overall. I've worked with many runners, from the 5K runner to even people that endurance guru with Ironmans as well. And all of them have their special moments and special meaning to me. But yeah, that period of not being able to run and getting their identity back is such a special piece of what I do.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to kind of the bad side of that story is, you go to a physical therapist and, oh, I have a running related injury, and well, do your glute strengthening, and then they kind of push you out the door and say, well, do the strengthening routine for 8 weeks and then see what happens. It's like, well, I could just Google a strength routine, and do that. But actually having somebody who understands runners, I think, is huge. Especially when you're talking about things like that gait analysis and some of the finer details that, if you don't know, you don't know. So I think, yeah, that's a huge value for people in our community, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Well,
So
oh, go ahead, Rod.
I just wanted to go back to something that you said at the end, about running on the treadmill.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, while everybody is probably getting most of their miles in on the treadmill, what differences do you notice between like the surfaces, running outside and running on the treadmill? I always feel like way more beat up from constantly being on the treadmill. I feel like I like watching a camera on a treadmill or something. I get so distracted, and then I'm
Totally.
landing all wonky, and I end up
Yeah.
getting hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally. So the whole feeling like you're getting beat up a little bit more, I personally think, and I see it within my runners, is you don't have that leverage point, that traction point like you do on, level ground surface. So your body has to work a little bit differently than what it's used to. So when you start to do more of the treadmill running, especially like early winter, your body's like, what the heck is this? You don't have that nice leverage point for your muscles to propel forward quite as much. So they're working so much harder. You probably have a lot of times get sore in different areas more so with our hip flexors, trying to do kind of more of the work. So a lot of that is, yeah, that traction point through there. Um, and treadmill can kind of throw our gait mechanics off a little bit compared to overground. Whether that absorption when you're landing every single stride, it's just can be a little bit tougher for individuals, not everyone, but it can alter your gait and running pattern just a little bit, where you do feel a little bit more beat up overall. Yeah, and you mentioned kind of like the distraction and kind of all over the place kind of deal. You have to use more balance. There's no getting away from that. So yeah, you're just using your body differently, and using your body differently typically means, all right, I'm sore in different areas and maybe a little bit more beat up.
Yeah, you have to choose between two evils living in South Dakota. It's like ice or treadmill.
Right.
What do you want to run on?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah, is there any specific like mechanic that you see thrown off more than another? Like in myself, it's hard to tell, obviously, unless you're in third person view. But it feels like maybe my forward lean isn't as forward as it is typically when I'm on the treadmill versus on flat ground.
Yeah. So great question. So you mentioned the forward lean. I will say a lot of times. Not that this is in the discussion on heel strike, forefoot strike. That's a whole another discussion. But I will say that I tend to see a little bit more rear foot strikes with individuals on that treadmill. And like I said, that ground moving underneath us tends to can alter the mechanics overall for runners, which in turn may be aligned with an overstride too. So yeah, so definitely runners do have the preference more so of running over level ground compared to treadmill. But not everyone, but I think because of the altered mechanics and kind of beating up the body a little bit more that way, that's why you see that.
Right. And, we were wondering, with the advent of kind of the carbon-plated super shoes, do you buy into any differences with that versus just your standard running shoe?
Yeah, kind of personal preference with that. I've played around with that running-wise. I do feel like for me, I do notice a little bit difference within my gait and my spring and my step overall. As far as like what the research has shown overall, I don't think there's significant differences in as far as running mechanics, gait mechanics, efficiency, running economy. But from a personal standpoint, with me playing around a little bit, I have felt a little bit more springier in my step, which I like. But yeah, I think it's more based on personal comfort as far as what people feel overall with that carbon plated shoe.
Do you deal with a lot of injuries from people that maybe just, use them from anything from a daily run to a race, like people that are in them just every day?
Right. Great question. I can't say that I've ran into that popping up as a prevalent issue with injuries overall. I do see the pattern more of, I got my carbon plated shoe for more of my race days and kind of some training on more race pace type work. But yeah, I can't say that I've seen like a correlation with injury overall, personally.
Okay.
With that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm on the boat where it's like, if I could afford it, I would probably run in them a lot more than I do.
Yeah.
But cool. So moving into the next topic then, I'm curious a little bit about some of the treatments that you do specifically that like help runners. So I know one day at 605 Running Company, you took us through a bit of the dry needling process, which was news to me when I saw that. So could you tell us a little bit about, kind of what is dry needling and why is it so effective?
Yeah, absolutely. So dry needling, dry meaning there's no fluid injection. Um, Dry needling itself, there's a couple different means for use within intervention. But one use is overall pain modulation, reduction of pain. Number two use, and these are kind of the top two that I personally use it with, is to reduce muscle tension, tight spots, knots, trigger points. That used to be and still is a very common use for the dry needling. So basically the process of it all though is we are specific to going into those tight spots and knots of dysfunctional muscle or painful muscle. So at most I typically do about 6 needles. So it's very specific. 4 to 6 needles is what I typically use. From there, we actually use electrical stimulation to get the muscle and needle moving within treatment. Before, they used to just do needle placement, let that sit, kind of do its thing for about 15 minutes, and then take the needles out. Research is showing that you get more bang for your buck, more effectiveness with, as I mentioned, decreasing pain, increasing flexibility, reducing stiffness and tension in muscles with using this electrical stimulation. That stimulation also is an re-education tool for your nervous system and for the muscles to fire. So it's teaching those muscles, this is how you're supposed to fire and support the body without having that crazy tension in them that is a contributing factor to why a runner is seeing me or their source of pain in general. So it's teaching, hey, this is how you're firing. So a lot of times when clients leave, they are sore as heck because we are literally getting that muscle firing at a very high frequency for typically my treatments are about 10 to 15 minutes. But I used to not, before I wasn't dry needling certified, utilizing my manual therapy skills, 2 to 3 treatments of manual therapy is what I would have to do compared to the effectiveness of now that I am able to use dry needling in one session for 15 minutes. It's super efficient, super effective that way. So it's a very powerful tool for all of us therapists to use within our sessions to get people better, quicker, and faster. I use it for all joints of the body pretty much overall as well.
Oh, I've had a lot of dry needling done on my back and my hamstrings, and it feels so good. Like you just feel so much better the day after. I feel like the day of it gets sore. I don't know. Don't feel the best, but it hits the spot.
Yeah, it's that 24 to 48 hours after the fact where things start to feel much better overall.
Yeah.
Yes. So if we're looking at like a race calendar, for example, or a training plan, when would be like a good time to kind of squeeze those types of treatments in? Should we wait until after a race, or how soon before a race, or how does that fit in?
Yeah, I feel like it's good to know, when if you're a runner, at what point should you contact a physical therapist? Like, is it really worth waiting until you're injured, or, when you're starting a training block? Yeah, kind of like how Derek asked, like, when should someone be contacting you?
Absolutely. Yeah. So really, as you mentioned, Rodrigo, like a start of a training block is perfect to get in to myself, to a physical therapist, to see kind of how your body's moving. What structures running wise are not as optimal, whether it's some range of motion stuff, whether it's some supportive strengthening work that just is not up to par, which can creep in and cause issues later on within that training bar. So it's taking that proactive approach is 100% what you want to do prior to a training block. Now, you mentioned kind of recovery post-race, pre-race, checking in, making sure that things are going well, like, get a treatment in prior to your training block. Your body's feeling pretty good, checking in 4 weeks, a month later to make sure that you're maintaining and you're making the gains that initially were set. I personally like to see if a runner has a big race coming up, seeing them a week before the race and getting some good dry needling work, recovery work, even you could classify it, to get the body moving appropriately. Is I love about a week before to really get at muscles, because I'll still make you sore, but as you mentioned, that 24 48 hours after the fact, then body's feeling really good leading up to things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Post race.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Post race, the use for dry needling and in the world of recovery, there's so much research going into that, and the parameters of what I would use for the electrical stimulation are different. So it's helping to kind of flush out all those metabolites that are sitting in the muscle and causing that soreness. And we utilize them in more of the bigger muscles. So like the quads, hamstrings, bigger muscles to flush that out. And the frequency, instead of it kind of being a fast frequency, it's more of a kind of a slow frequency beat to just really kind of get the muscle, big contractions, move those metabolites out for recovery purposes.
Very cool. I got to try it after a race.
Yes. No, you'll love it. You'll feel so much better, faster overall, and into those big muscle groups. That's always fun.
Yeah, and that talking about the pre-race, back to that is, let's say probably about 10 days out is going to be your last big workout. So it almost makes sense. Okay, if we have a big workout 10 days out, do you say, okay, timing it, it's okay, a big workout and then the next day I would come in and get needling, or would you prefer time between, hard sessions, or how does that, on the more close up zoomed in level, how does that look?
Right. So if you do, your last hard workout 10 days prior to race, I would want to see 48 hours after the fact. Give your body a little bit of self-recovery work, and then let me hit it up, because from there, your body's going to show, outside of this, big soreness stuff that's going on, that will kind of alleviate a little bit, and I can kind of dig in a little bit more and see more specific things that need to be worked on, if that makes sense.
For sure.
So yeah, I would say, that last hard workout, 48, 72 hours would be where I want to see you. So about that week.
Perfect. I got a race coming up, so I'm maybe I
Frostbite 4.
Love it.
But yeah, no, I appreciate you kind of diving into the details on that. I think those are a lot of questions that I hadn't honestly thought about until we got into this conversation, is, how does it fit? So thank you very much for shedding some light on that.
Yeah, I think it's great for people to know. I think people associate physical therapy with a post, or something that you do when you're injured, and that's it. And I think there's so many benefits outside of that. If someone came to you early on, they can work on their weaknesses, know how to get the proper recovery. I think it's very important for all runners to have access to all that.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is just teaching, educating on those things, whether it's recovery, whether it's properly warming up, whether it's kind of some small weaknesses and instabilities that that is personal and or I should say specific to that runner that they can then work on, is so beneficial and so proactive where they aren't. So then we don't have to come to me with, I have this injury, I have this pain.
Yeah, I remember we had an EmpowerU session down at 605 Running that was the basics of foam rolling, and I just remember talking about the hurt so good theme, and like really hammering in on some of those tender soft spots with the foam roller. Like, do you, when you work with athletes, do you educate them kind of on some of those uses that they could use in their day-to-day life with recovery in that type of setting?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, recovery work with foam rollers, with massage trackball or trigger point balls, the cross balls. That's 100% integrated into my runners. And for me, like personally, as a runner, I did not, and this is very common, do that recovery work. And I remember the first time doing some foam rolling, some massage trackball, and it was eye-opening. It was like, wow, I did not realize that my body is really tight, and that tightness is it does hinder performance. So yes, foam rolling, massage trackball, hitting kind of the bigger muscle groups in general, and then teaching runners, not just runners, but a lot of people that I work with, how to efficiently and effectively use the foam roller. So a lot of times people are like, yeah, I bought this foam roller, but I don't really know what to do or how to use it. So going into the specifics on how to be effective with it is one point. Parameters of time, parameters of where you want to hit kind of those tighter points that typically our minds want to kind of stay away from. But it's safe, and that's where you need to go for recovery purposes. And then kind of when this occurs. So a lot of the foam rolling, massage trackball work, that is going to be more post-run type of activity. And integrating that strategically into people's plans, whether it's right after running, whether it's just at night, kind of before bed. It's a really nice way to kind of wind down and get things moving, and kind of loosening up. Getting into more of that parasympathetic or calming nervous system before bed is a great way to integrate it as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Thanks for the insight onto that. I mean, I think we can all relate to having a foam roller and like, oh, well, one thing I learned was I didn't know that, I should be, finding a hot spot and then like rotating my foot or, moving my ankle to just work that muscle while I'm sitting on a spot. And so like I can attest that there's a lot of cool tips and tricks that I learned from working with you guys. But I think next we have some questions from our Instagram followers. But before we get into that, I just wanted to open the floor. If you had any other treatments that you wanted to give us any detail on that maybe I'm not aware of or Rod's not aware of, or any other treatments that, might be of benefit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So as far as what I do for my runners, yes, we talked about dry needling. Complementing that with lots of hands-on manual therapy work. That is more soft tissue mobilization, so hands-on work that way. Joint mobilization, where I'm actually getting into the joint and working the joint itself to get things moving to help with pain modulation as well. From there, I will look for those instabilities or those muscle imbalances from side to side, which are often there's a contributing factor. A lot of times that can be kind of the source of where dysfunction started. I can do all the dry needling, I can do all the manual therapy work and make you feel good, but you're going to come back in a couple of weeks with the same pain if I don't address more of that kind of that strength, but more activation, getting muscles activated where they need to be. That's primarily what I do first, and then I will do a treadmill analysis with my clients as well. And that's usually second or third visit with me. And from there, I'm looking for kind of big picture stuff. A lot of times what I just talked about will help with the client's pain or dysfunction. But if I see a big overstride, if I see very lack of forward lean, if I see a huge cadence problem with the runner, those are looking for kind of the big picture stuff that definitely need to be addressed for their rehab process as well.
Awesome. I do have another question too that I want to touch on before we move on to the other questions. We were talking about like warm up. So how should people be warming up? How long should it be before they get going and stuff?
Absolutely. So warm up preference, dynamic warm up is the go-to. So we have static stretching. That is something that I actually want runners to be doing more after the runs. Part of their recovery, some long static holds. The best warm-up for running is dynamic, meaning you're moving and stretching muscle. So for example, doing more kind of a standing high knee exercise where I'm not necessarily just holding here and just hanging out, standing and holding, but I'm getting muscles moving and alternating kind of more at a quick pace, more of a running cadence pace. Utilizing forward movement with some hip kicks and kind of getting the plyometric jumping warm up part as well. That is the most effective way to try to get warm up. There are some specific stretches, like if I have a runner that's going through some rehab and they have some things that I want them to do, I'd be like, all right, do a little bit of stretch work and then go into your dynamic warm up from there. So.
All right.
Does that make that answer?
Yeah, no, I think that's perfect.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Well, I think if you're ready, then we'll hop into some questions from our audience. Cool.
Absolutely.
So the first one we did kind of touch on in your intro, but it's you talked about when you got into running, but why did you choose running?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Running for me, initially it was more of that sport, that competition early on in my running career. I stuck with it as an outlet for myself. It is a hobby for me. It is a stress reliever. It is a community thing. Socializing with other people, with other runners. There's so many different ties and things with running that help or that are beneficial to people. So for me, I love moving my body and being able to run. That's something that I try not to take for granted because I know being able to do this movement is a driver for me, for lack of better terms there. There's many different outlets and reasons why, as I highlighted, but those are kind of the main ones overall.
Love it. So next viewer wants to know what's your best tip for a new runner who's just getting started?
Yeah. Yeah, the best tip there is being patient with your body, but also starting off right with whether it's a coach, whether it's a group of experienced runners as well. I see a lot just within the kind of fitness world and clientele that have people that have tried to begin running and it didn't work out for them just because of whether it was injuries, whether it was I didn't really know what I was doing kind of thing, so I just kind of gave it up. If you want to kind of be, want to make running part of your wellness and part of your fitness, or become a road racer, goals, whatever your goal would be, find support, and there is support within the Sioux Falls community, and that would be my number one tip overall.
Yeah, I think Derek knows some really good coaches here locally.
Yeah, right.
I know a few.
Yeah, you might know someone or two.
Yeah, and
But yeah, no.
I just kind of wanted to bounce off your answers. Like, I was that person who just kind of jumped into it, and then I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna run a marathon, and I just ran a marathon, and then I ran another marathon, and then I was injured for like a year, and and so like I'm kind of the picture perfect example of things that you should not do. Um, the exact opposite of your answer. So please listen to what Mary is telling you. She is very right. But yeah. So this next question, though, we got. You did touch on a little bit as well. So if there's anything else that you want to add in about your pre-run and post-run routine that you'd like to share.
Yeah. So pre-run routine, that dynamic warm-up that I mentioned. I'm not going to say that I do a dynamic warm-up every single run, but that is as simple as, like, when I'm getting ready, if I'm doing a morning run and I'm whatever in the bathroom just getting ready, I'm doing like heel raises, rocking back and forth, warming things up that way, like within my little routine in the morning, which is a really nice way to try to integrate some movement, even pre like dynamic run, more specific. That dynamic run, I often tell people, or that dynamic warm up, give me 5 minutes of movement. 5 minutes of movement, different, and we'll go through different dynamic stretches and warm up. 5 minutes is what I ask. It makes such a world of a difference of if you just go cold static compared to doing a little bit of 5 minutes of movement. And then my post run, I do a lot of static stretching. But I will, if I notice that I am really tight in specific areas, then absolutely I'm getting the foam roller out, massage trackball, hitting up wherever I need to go. That way, directly after a run. I like to utilize that foam roller, especially even at like after work or towards like I said, in the evenings, and doing a little bit more generalized hitting, kind of bigger muscle groups, and utilizing those tools that way.
Awesome.
If someone wanted to incorporate some strength training in there, should they be doing it after? Maybe if you only have time to run in the morning, wait to lift in the evening, or better to lift in the morning and run in the evening?
Yeah, I would say I personally would probably sequence the run before lift, and there's a lot of things that go into that. Kind of depends on what are we doing for strength training, like where are we at intensity wise. So if let's say I do like a decent leg day, resistance training work where I'm lifting a little bit heavier overall, that kind of soreness, that tightness can kick in, fairly soon that day, which is totally okay as long as you do kind of a proper warm up prior to if you're doing a run. But typically I'd like to kind of do the run first, lift, and then, give my body that time before I hit, whether it's running again, whether it's lifting again, that type of sequence there.
Awesome.
Awesome. Yeah. So our next listener, their question was, if you're at a desk all day, is there any hip exercises or stretches that you can do to help prevent some of that tightness they might be experiencing?
Yes, absolutely. So if we're talking, sitting at a desk, the number one muscles that are going to be tight are definitely going to be hip flexors. So front of the hips, they're here. So personally, one easy way is standing and literally here, grab onto something or a little bit of balance point, come up and bring your foot towards your bottom that way. That's going to stretch out front of the hip. That's going to stretch out quad that way. So literally getting off your butt and standing, which is going to be really good for your body in general, especially if you do have to sit quite a bit, to get at hip, get at quad, get at hip flexors. With that, even sitting kind of with like figure four with knees out and working a little bit more into the kind of the groin muscles that way too, just to open up those hips, is a easy exercise, easy thing to do to get those hips out of that kind of normal sitting position overall.
Perfect. Yeah, I will say about my last 6 months of working in a cubicle, I got one of those the variable height desks, so I would rotate between standing and sitting every half hour or so, and I felt like that made a huge difference.
Absolutely, that will do wonders for your body overall. Any static positioning, whether you're sitting for a while, whether you're standing for a while, they're going to cause different areas of the body to tighten up. So the main thing is to have a variation throughout your day. 30 minutes is definitely optimal with that. So you nailed it.
Perfect. Next question. Do you have a dream race that you would like to compete in someday?
For me, I want to do a race on the coast, whether that's East Coast, West Coast. Right now, just going through my mind would be like in the Northeast. And I'm all about, right now I'm kind of in the half marathon stage. I had my one moment in my last half, was my last one. I think it was my last half marathon where it's like, oh, I could do a marathon, but I'm still in the half marathon phase right now. But for me, moving the body and getting beautiful scenery at the same time is what I love. So, yeah, we're being kind of specific, but not specific at the same time. That's my answer there.
Yeah, about the best compromise you can get without having to travel that far is Rod and I went out to Grandma's Marathon and the Gary Bjorklund half. You're at least running along the coast of the Great Lakes.
Yes, there we go.
Beautiful weather.
That'll do.
Yeah. Right. Except for on the drive out to the bus stop, I did see a bear. So that kind of spooked me a little bit. I was like, I hope I don't run across a bear. Yeah, dude.
You saw a bear?
It was like 2 blocks away from the J.C. Penney's in town. I'm like, what?
What? That's crazy.
That is nuts.
So thankfully,
I thought your dream race was going to be the skedaddle.
Well, I've ran that one though.
Yeah, EmpowerU's huge partners with the Sioux Falls Half Marathon Skedaddle, so we are super grateful to have you guys on board. with that. Should be everybody's
Absolutely.
favorite half marathon in Sioux Falls.
Oh yeah, if you live here, you should check it out.
Yeah, new course this year.
Absolutely.
It's going to be fast and fun.
I got a
Go ahead.
question to throw your way actually. I was talking to my girlfriend and I was like, what questions should I ask? And she was like, what about sleeping positions? Like, do sleeping positions matter? Um, During the last year, we got like 3 giant dogs, and as they've grown, they've taken over our bed, unfortunately.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I find myself sleeping in really weird positions. And yeah, some days I don't feel as great as others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get your pain there with the dogs taking out the bed. Um, but yeah, so the main thing with that is, sleeping positions are going to definitely put different muscles in shorter positions, which ultimately leads to tightness, stiffness. I think the number one thing with that is if it's a consistent sleeping position that is where you're maybe crunched up a little bit more, lying on your stomach is definitely not my favorite, but there are some people that are stomach sleepers, but they tend to cause tightness in different areas of the body. So if it's not like a consistent thing, you're still going to have that tightness within the muscles, but that's when you use those tools of foam rolling, massage trackball to work those areas out. If it's a consistent thing where we're in a more of crunched position, that can have a little bit more long-term effects on the body overall. That's when if that seems to be kind of brought up in conversation with clients, that's when we talk a little bit more about like different strategic sleeping positions, whether that's lying on the side, pillow between the knees, talking about pillow positioning where you want more of a neutral neck position where you're not cranked to one side versus the other, which can affect clients with neck pain. But yeah, I think that ultimately, if it's not a continuous pattern, hopefully for you, Rodrigo, the dogs give you some space here and there. But working specifically, feeling your body like, all right, yeah, I'm sore from this. Let me work it out with some of the massage trackball, some foam rolling work. That might be part of your regimen a little bit more.
Yeah, there's a lot of mornings that I have to foam roll.
Yeah. Yeah.
Dynamic stretching. You got it. Okay. So we have one more question from listener, and I think it's a good one for us to close out with. What is your favorite thing about the Sioux Falls running community?
That's a great question. As I've been more involved now the last year and a half, 2 years with moving to Sioux Falls, it is a very, very supportive group. And there's a lot of different groups between 605 Running Company, between Sioux Falls Area Run Club, between Sioux Falls Women Run. There's so many different supportive avenues within Sioux Falls itself. I'm thinking back at different places that I lived, and there was maybe one group that was kind of the group, if any, that you could do group runs with. Otherwise, I've never had or seen the support of running within a community, even as big as what Sioux Falls is and how much it's growing. So that is what I am significantly most impressed with overall with the community of Sioux Falls and with the running community here.
It's a great place to run. You
Yeah.
know, we're spoiled with everybody has a place to run, and we have 20 plus miles of paved trails and parks and all sorts of different opportunities. So yeah, we're definitely very spoiled and have every reason to be super thankful for everything that's going on.
No, absolutely. Between in Sioux Falls, outside of Sioux Falls, with trail running, it's a very, if you're a runner, it's a very good community to be a part of with Sioux Falls.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. So I think that's all the questions we had from our listeners. But I do want to hear a little bit more about you before we let you go here. Yeah, could you tell us about any upcoming new and exciting things happening with EmpowerU as a whole, or anything that's coming down the pipeline?
Yes, I would love to share. So, our biggest news is that we are building our own clinic, and that is going to be here, projecting late spring to early summer of this year. The location of our clinic is going to be located on 85th and Cliff, with our partnership with All American Gymnastics, so literally right next to their facility there. With that, our clinic, we have designed it to what we want it to be. So exciting points of that is that we are going to have 1,500 square foot turf area within our own clinic. We're going to have squat racks. We're going to have exercise equipment with dumbbells, treadmills, all within one big area and big space there. We'll have our private clinic rooms as well, but we're also going to have, which is kind of a cool feature, our locker room and showers as well for clients to use too, because we do tend to make our clients work, and our clients typically appreciate that. So that means that we do get you guys moving and sweating. So if you want to use the locker rooms there, that's totally cool, and that's part of our building as well. But yeah, we couldn't be more excited to have this as a team, all of us treating under one roof, and that is the big and exciting news coming late spring, early summer.
Super
That's
excited.
awesome.
Yeah, there's a video showing kind of the virtual tour, and so maybe we'll throw that link in the description. It's going to be a really, really cool facility, and I'm super excited for you guys, and it's going to be nice for you to have a permanent home. So we're excited for you.
Totally. No, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, so if people wanted to get a hold of you and stuff, how do they contact you?
Yeah. So overall, you can contact me directly via email, and you can find that email on our EmpowerU website. Also, I've had people reach out to me just via Facebook, Instagram, as well, and personal messages that way. With as Mary Kerkvliet is my full name, but you can find me on socials as well. Otherwise, if someone is interested in setting up an appointment, you can also find our number on our website, and then or request on our website to set up an appointment, or call the main line, and then Chaylee will make sure to get you on my schedule.
Perfect. Well, I think that's everything. Mary, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're really glad that you were able to hop on and share your story with us a little bit. And yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I think with that, everybody have a good night. Thank you for watching or listening to episode 4 of the Zenith Endurance Podcast. We'll see you later.
Hey guys.
Thanks.